Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's that time of the week. It's your Saturday night delight. It's time for your Geek Culture 411. The Skip and D Connection are back. Skip, you ready to talk about all the comic book and movie news?
As crazy as this week has been, days like this make things feel normal again. Let's talk about some geek culture news, man.
All right, it's time for your Geek Culture news. All right, Skip. At the last second, DC and Marvel canceled all planned digital comic releases this week. How are you handling a new comic book day with virtually no new comics?
Fact of the matter, man, it feels really, really, really weird. You never imagine that a day like this, where you're just so used to that one thing, that one steady thing, new titles to read, doesn't come about. It's even got me missing some of the X-Men books that I wasn't even interested in anymore. If only one of those came out, if Excalibur came out today, best believe I'd be reading it just because it's a new comic on today. But it's felt weird. So naturally, I'm doing what a lot of other people have done. I heard that, you and Doc are doing, just going back on those back issues, man, catching up on fun stories that I never read before or that I started reading and didn't finish the trade. So, I'm trying to make my best of it and make it feel a little more normal by still reading comics, but no new comics. It really does feel like the world has kind of stopped turning a little bit. How are you feeling about it, Wes? How are you dealing with it?
There's a lot of news coming out right now. So having the channel, I am doing a lot of research. I'm making a lot of phone calls. Well, not phone calls. I'm messaging people, making a lot of content. So I am staying busy, but it feels weird. I don't like the feeling. I don't like the way it makes me feel having a Wednesday without new comic books. Although I am still reading comic books, and I'm getting in on some of that. I'm still got my Remender Bender going on. The guy's got so many great comics to read. And right now I'm focusing a little bit on Batman, specifically Dark Victories, because I got a video with my buddy Josh that we're going to make here pretty soon when we talk about that in the Long Halloween. So I'm keeping myself busy, but I know something is missing. I can feel it, deep inside my bones. It doesn't feel great, man. Hopefully you're catching up on Robert Venditti's Exo Manowar, and we can finally do that Exo Manowar, live chat thing we were going to do on Twitch and then put it here on YouTube.
Yeah, everybody might want to keep an eye out for that because, I'll definitely be finishing that up soon. And Rick Remender, shout out to Death or Glory. Love that book, finishing that up as well. All right, well, out of the comics and into the comic book movie realm, Bloodshot and Birds of Prey received early home streaming releases due to the ongoing crisis. According to Fandango Now, Valiant's Bloodshot outsold DC's Harley Quinn-led film. Are you surprised by those results, Wes?
I'll be honest. I am surprised. The marketing for either film, for neither film, was actually good. So they both kind of, I don't think either one of them were going to really perform well at the box office. Obviously, the crisis that we're in prevented us from knowing exactly how well they would do. But they both released on the very same day on video on demand, and to see Bloodshot actually outperform Birds of Prey just speaks to volumes about the terrible marketing push that they did. Having some of the stars of the film go out there and say this film's about misogyny, just every key word that you could do to turn off a movie going audience for a comic book superhero movie. And I just think Birds of Prey is going to be a lesson. It's going to be one of those things that they teach in school, in film school in 10 years, how not to market your film, how to turn off an audience, because it should not be performing as poorly as Bloodshot, while they're both going head to head during the same week on video on demand. It is a bigger film. It's a DC film versus a Valiant film. You look at the sales between a bad DC comic, and they still beat almost all the Valiant comics. So I find it baffling, but that marketing campaign for Birds of Prey really was ass.
Facts, man. I mean, learn to stay away from the Jennies, the is, and the isms. When you Jenny, is, and isms, stay away from those when you're marketing your movie. You know, I mean, unless it's literally something like historically based, you know, some sort of event. You know, if it's not like a, you know, like a whatever they call those docu-drama or, you know, or anything like that. If it's not one of those, then just stay away from it. The normies, when they hear those things, they're just like, you know, they're not rushing towards it. They're thinking like, is this something that I can take my family to, or is this something that if I go into, I'm going to have to think too hard about what side I should be on? They want to go grab some popcorn, hit themselves in the forehead with the popcorn hammer, and enjoy a film. And if you manage to tell just a good story within there, they'll follow along. But once you start leaning into something and it feels like you're pushing people into something, it makes them uncomfortable and turns them off. Not to mention that, you know, like you said, the campaigns for, I mean, the promotional campaigns for both of them weren't good. But at the very least, with Bloodshot, you know, you're getting Vin Diesel, you're getting muscle, you're getting action, and, you know, it has something to do with technology. People can get behind that, and especially if you deliver it right into their home. So I will be honest, still, with the popularity of Harley Quinn, especially after her popularity rose so much after Suicide Squad, I still am a little surprised that Bloodshot outsold them. I haven't seen either movie yet. I was planning on starting with Bloodshot anyway, just because I was curious, but now I'm definitely going to be starting with Bloodshot.
Yeah, it's crazy when the worst thing people have to say about your movie is it's just a generic 90s action movie. You're not really offending anybody. So, lesson learned. Skip. San Diego Comic-Con's official Twitter account recently stated, despite the current crisis, they plan to hold the con as scheduled in late July. Is this wishful thinking on the part of San Diego Comic-Con's organizers?
I have to say that it's wishful thinking. The amount of uncertainty right now is, you know, almost at an all-time high. Too high for us to put flags in the ground on any large social gathering. We just don't know. And for us out here in the States, where San Diego Comic-Con is taking place, we've just got an extension at, you know, for our federal, you know, advisory for people to shelter in home. So, you know, California, you know, was early on the shelter at home thing. San Diego is obviously in Southern California. I don't see Gavin Newsom lifting that anytime soon. Very much wishful thinking. Do I hope that we would be able to get back to it at that point? Absolutely. But we're not quite sure that we've hit our peak yet. And with countries like South Korea kind of seeing their curve flatten a little bit more, we're not seeing that yet. So I think wishful thinking at best. I don't know what San Diego Comic-Con has to gain by trying to keep that there. It's starting to concern me almost, as if they're not as concerned for people's health or for people's finances who have been invested. You know, let them know to pull out. Let them put those funds somewhere else if they can in this time of uncertainty. But Wes, wishful thinking at best. What's your take on it?
That's absolutely wishful thinking. I understand why they're doing it, because they probably don't want to start refunding all that money right now. You know, times are tight. I guess, you know, there is a 0.5% chance that everything just clears up overnight. But even if that happens, and I truly believe this, people are not going to want to get in big crowds for a while. I think everyone's going to be a little shell shocked after all this stuff. You know, people aren't going to want to go to Disneyland and be close to people all day. You know, there's going to be a little bit of a fear factor out there. So I think it's wishful thinking. They're going to end up having to refund all this. And I imagine that the whole con's going to be scrapped for this year. And then, you know, there'll be a 2021 con for LA and San Diego. But they should probably start planning for it. You know, it's you know, bad news does not age like wine. It does not get better with time. It's best to get out ahead of it. Let your vendors know, let the participants know, hey, you know, we are planning for this not to happen. If you want your refunds now, you know, start get with us so we can do this in an orderly fashion, because once they wait too late, they're going to announce it too late. Everyone's going to flood them at the exact same time, and it's going to be pandemonium, and people are going to get ripped off. They're not going to enjoy their experience, and they might, tarnish their reputation a little bit. So you don't want to do that. And, everybody's having a hard time right now. I understand why they haven't done it, but I think they're going to wish they had. Probably just best to get out in front of it.
I fully agree. Couldn't have said it any better. All right. Well, everybody's been watching tons of Netflix now that we're, mostly all staying at home for extended periods of time. So with that news, as expected, Netflix renewed IDW's Lock and Key for another season, but declined further seasons of V-Wars and October Faction. Is the writing on the wall for IDWS?
It feels like it's been on the wall for a while now. They've been reporting massive losses for a few years now. They are in just an enormous pile of debt for the amount of, or the size of the company and the assets that it has. So, it feels like the violin has been playing a tune for IDW for a few years now. And we expected this. We knew that we knew that Netflix was going to renew Lock and Key because it performed very well, right out of the gate. When you went to your Netflix and it showed the top 10, even here in the Philippines, IDW was in, IDW's Lock and Key was in that top 10 list for a few weeks. It's not anymore, but that's how Netflix works. V-Wars and October Faction they got no promo, they got no marketing. Netflix put basically zero effort to let their subscribers know that those shows were there, and IDW was definitely expecting some type of return on those shows. And there was none. They're not getting another season. And IDW basically burdened all the expense on those productions. They did it in-house. That's probably a big reason why they failed, because they don't really have that production experience. And because Netflix didn't have any skin in the game, they had no money invested themselves. Why would they promote it when they have other productions, other shows that are coming out that they have money invested in, and they're going to make some money back on? They're going to get some of that profit. So it's too bad. We're probably going to lose. I think that's going to be the first comic publisher that we lose, due to everything going on. But it certainly won't directly be because of this. It'll just be the straw that kind of broke the camel's back. But the writing's been on the wall for a while.
Yeah, I agree with you. They were already teetering and kind of on the line of, sticking around and being around for much longer. They just were, making decisions that didn't equate to making money. And, they just kept throwing Hail Mary after Hail Mary after Hail Mary. You keep throwing Hail Marys, you're going to start getting interceptions big time. And, unfortunately, that's been the case for them. I mean, luckily, Lock and Key is getting renewed. But even with that, Wes, that's good news for them. 1 out of 3 is actually good news for a property and company like IDW. But if season 2, that's the thing, though, they need it to be massively successful. If they're hoping to get back so much of the money that they've lost, and we're talking, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions at this point, right? If they're looking to get any of that back, they have to have a massive hit on their hands. So whatever they do with season 2, hopefully for them, that means whatever resources they were putting into V-Wars and October Faction, if they can focus that, channel that, and maybe bring in some more experienced people where, maybe you have to pay a little bit more money, but if you have to pay a little bit more for the hope of having a lot more success, then so be it. But you're right, man. They won't be out of it due to the current health crisis. That just might be the nail in the coffin.
So if you are interested in my feelings about Netflix and other streaming service vis-a-vis with comic books, there is a video on the channel released yesterday called Streaming Shows Are Killing Comic Books. I suggest you check it out. It's a great view. You're going to enjoy it. All right. Sony is delaying many of its biggest 2020 releases until 2021, most notably Ghostbusters Afterlife and Spider-Man spinoff Morbius. Are we going to have a summer without a single blockbuster movie released this year?
For the first time in a long time, Wes, for the first time in a very long time. And, if we have a summer blockbuster released for the first time ever, it will be in home. We've heard stories of possibly one of the bigger movies, possibly Black Widow or whatever, having Disney having discussions of trying to stave off some of its losses with its stock prices going down by releasing something to kind of get some cash coming in. But I think that still might be that might be a far-fetched. But for people like us who just want to experience, summer blockbuster entertainment, we're going to have a larger appreciation for it, because I don't think we're going to get it this summer, Wes. It's just too much going on. Companies that have invested so much money into those movies, up until this happened, and, they invest even sometimes hundreds of millions alone in just the marketing and promotion of these movies, setting some of these budgets closer to, 300 million, 400 million, depending on what the film is. I hope that it's a little bit lower for a movie like Black Widow, where you can do a lot more practical effects and a lot less CGI, which costs so much money these days. But I think this might be our first summer without a summer blockbuster. How would that affect you?
Well, me personally, there's no movie theater within 4 or 5 hours of me. So if there is a movie like an End Game or something real special, like I did make sure and go and see what was it, the Force Awakens, the one I hated so much.
The Sky
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. Last Jedi. I've signed off on Star Wars after the Force Awakens, but I definitely made sure I packed up the family. We went and saw that movie. I packed up the family. We went and saw Endgame. There was going to be something this summer that we would have made sure and made a trip, but we'll be staying at home, and I think everyone's going to be staying at home. And it's it's too bad. Ever since Jaws hit all those years ago, the summer blockbuster has been a big part of the American culture. And it's part of world culture now, is that summer blockbuster season. And we're not getting it this year. I do think we might get a Christmas blockbuster season where some of these movies are moved back to Christmas, and maybe even we'll actually have good movies in February next year, and January, which is normally the graveyard where you just dump all your crap movies that you don't think are any good. We might see them get like a full year of stacked great movies, because these movies that are ready to go, that they aren't in production anymore, they're finished products, need to be delivered soon, and these film companies, they need to make their money back. They have a lot of money invested in them. It's just sitting out there, and they're getting no return right now. So I think we're probably going to lose some of those film companies as well. So it's terrible, but we will get blockbusters next year. I don't see this happening, back to back. We'll probably see something like this again in our lifetime, because this is nuts, but hopefully not too soon.
I'm hoping we don't. We need our blockbusters. I love getting out the house and watching those movies. And here in Sacramento, there are a few drive-in theaters that have very strict rules now about people not being able to leave the cars and such, but we are still able to go watch drive-in movies. It would be interesting to see if any of those came back, but you got to have money in order to start those businesses or revive them. And right now, money is tight. But speaking of things to get excited about, oh boy, Scott Snyder confirmed Wally West is featured in DC's Dark Knight's death metal event. Does this confirm death metal leads directly into Generation 5?
This is really interesting. I think it does, because we knew months ago that Scott Snyder had basically put the kibosh and said, thank you very much with your Generation 5 story, but this is my Dark Knight's death metal event. I've been working for years to finally get to this. You didn't have a lot of confidence when I wanted to do Dark Knight's metal, but he did set up this sequel event, and they've been working towards it for 8 or 9 months now. Obviously it's going to be delayed with everything that's happening right now. And he said, nah, you keep your Generation 5 to yourself. It's not needed in this story. It's going to be too bloated. But once Dan Didio got fired, the word got out that Scott Snyder was taking a bigger leadership role, that he was adjusting. He was one of the creative voices adjusting the lead in to Generation 5 now called G5 instead of 5G. And I'm pretty certain that means he's incorporated it into his Dark Knight's death metal event. And I think it is going to lead directly into to Generation 5. Why else would you have Wally West, Dr. Manhattan in your death metal event? He shouldn't really be there unless it's going to be tied directly to the event that he's basically causing, with him taking his place on the Morbius chair and becoming omnipotent and realizing that the fabric of time itself is collapsing in our the DC multiverse is at stake. So yeah, I think so.
I think so too. With Dan Didio not being there, it's been, rumored and said that Scott Snyder is getting a lot more favorable treatment. And I don't mean that. I take that as he's been getting treated better and he's been valued a little bit more. And when you do that to someone and you give them, if you say, hey, we want this to go into this, not you need to make this go into this, but we would like this in some way to go over into this, if you had all the control over it, how would you seed that? Even if it's just in a small amount, how would you seed it to help us bring it over into this thing? And then once it comes over into this thing, what do you feel about this new thing? What are some of the touches that you would put on it? How would you make it more successful? Things like that, make it, it makes it feel like people are more valued. They're more willing to work with something that maybe wasn't their idea and all that to begin with. So I can definitely see it, especially bringing Wally West in. I'm, with all of this and seeing the last minute changes, so to speak, to it, it's just boggling my mind to see the journey and the path of DC, like just from Rebirth to here, knowing that this wasn't exactly how they pictured it, and rarely does it ever go exactly the way you think it would, but with changes in staff, changes in editors, pulling certain people off of books earlier than expected. It's crazy to me that Wally West is the Dr. Manhattan figure that's going to lead things over into it. Now, luckily they've spun it pretty well. People were pretty receptive of Scott Lobdell's Flash Forward, so I get that, but it just boggles my mind to see how, in a sense, DC has kind of been tripping over itself, but got pulled out of the fire a little bit by some people that came up with some creative ideas. And now I think more than I anticipated with this setup, people are probably a lot more willing to take a look into not 5G, but to G5. So I'm in a way pretty impressed by the new reception. Now, everybody's conversations are a lot more open-minded to it. So, good luck to DC, because I don't want to see them fail. It doesn't do me any good. I am not reading a bunch of DC books. I don't think I'm reading any current DC books right now. I've dropped the Sean Gordon Murphy, The Curse of the White Knight. I'm hoping that this does well for them, and I'm hoping it's something that does get me excited about DC, so I can be reading more of their books again.
Yep. If you want more information on Flash Forward and Wally West in the Morbius chair, and how it all came into fruition, Perch did a great interview with Brett Booth, the artist, and he talked a little bit about the creative process and where all that came from. And definitely go to his channel, subscribe there if you haven't, and check that interview out. It's really great. So that'll just about wrap it up for this week's Geek Span. We had a great show for you today. Thank you all for joining us. Salamat Po. There it is. And I'm out.